All right. I'm on the phone with Toby, who was with me on this camping trip for this documentary. And the reason I'm calling Toby is to interview him and to ask him some questions about what he experienced um, that weekend or that week that we were out there, and more specifically about the events that happened. So I've created some questions for you, Toby, and we haven't talked about the questions. I haven't sent you the questions. You don't know what I'm going to ask, correct?
I do not.
Okay, sounds
So it
good.
should be exciting.
Yeah. um, so I guess first question is, how long have we known each other?
We met each other 2007, I believe.
hmm So about
2007. Yeah. Yep. Came up to
16.
Minnesota. Yeah, maybe I don't know how long we chatted online, but I met you in person, I think in '07. So, yeah.
Okay. So we've known each other about 16, 17 years.
Yep.
Quite a
Yep.
while.
Quite a
Um,
while. Yep.
so now, would you consider me a normal, sane person who doesn't have any mental
Abs
issues or?
it, no, yeah, absolutely sane. Yep. As much as we all can be.
Yeah, I don't have a weird mental issue or any type of weird thing about me to
No.
where I want to see Bigfoot in every shadow, or I haven't appeared to be that way when we get out camping and stuff where I really want to see Bigfoot or I see Bigfoot like every time we get out. Correct.
Nope. Nope. I probably wouldn't go out with you if that's who you were.
Great. Nor are you that way. I would say you're probably more skeptical than me. Um, so in our years together, um, I think I can cut this out, but I'll ask it again. In our years together, have I been a person to say that everything was Bigfoot, like stick structures or TPs, or am I always trying to find evidence of them while we're out there?
I, when we first started doing it, I think we all were looking at those things. We were, just because we were kind of new at it, and the internet kind of gave us that impression that all these things were Bigfoot related all the time. But, I think we matured pretty fast through that, kind of picked up on a lot of the nonsense that was involved with all that. So, yeah, I'd say over the last, the last years we were doing heavy research, yeah, we kind of glossed over a lot of that stuff. And, as far as tree breaks and X formations and
hmm
just natural forest phenomenon. So, no, I think you had very level head. And, I maybe my skepticism was rubbing off on you a lot. But,
well,
I think, you took more of like scientific approach to a lot of things,
mhm,
which I liked. So, yeah, you wanted, data
right,
instead of just like glamorizing, oh, maybe a Bigfoot made this and,
right.
so,
And would you say that we were finding many of those things in our research?
like
Were we
tree
find
bows and
Yeah,
stuff.
were we finding tracks? Were we finding imprints? Were we finding tree breaks? Were we finding TPs? Were we finding um, evidence of them? Did we find much of that at all?
No, not up where we researched there in Minnesota. No.
Right, right. So we originally started getting out in 2008. You met in 2007. Can you kind of give me just a quick history of our time together, how it kind of began, and where we went and the things that we did?
Sure. So when we first met, I think we went up on the St. Croix because my wife was in town in Minneapolis by you guys, and we just decided to meet up. So I brought my boat, and we were basically at that point kind of just going off reports that we'd read on the internet and maybe looking in those areas where the reports came from and just looking for evidence. And then when the situation occurred up there in Minnesota, northern Minnesota, and the area that we've been going up to for the last 15 years. That's kind of what kicked off like an, you know, sometimes biannual or at least an annual trip up there.
Right.
And um, where, you know, there was a fresh report and everyone was talking about it. And, you know, we knew people who lived up there. And so we had access to the property
Hmm.
like close by and we were able to get back in those areas. So there was a lot of excitement because we really thought that was a great chance to get some evidence.
Hmm. And I mean, we were all in back in those days, you know, Right.
infrared cameras and really just all those trips up there really focused on documenting an encounter if we would have one or
Right.
any type of evidence and you know trying to have interactions and but you know came up dry for a long long time.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. My next question was how would you measure our success?
um well success on you know doing what we wanted to accomplish as far as putting these I would call them programs or you know because like every time we would try something a little different
Right.
and I think we had great success in like doing that part of it just nothing happening
Can
or
you mention a few of those things that we did?
sure like so the theory was you know you couldn't have infrared trail cameras or any infrared light they could see the light so when we set up that first big camera trap we actually had everything turned off, and then if we would hear something, we would just flip a switch, and then all the cameras would come on.
Hmm.
And we were hoping that you know, if there was one of these things in close enough, we would surprise it and catch it on camera because there would be no signals coming from anything.
Right.
Um, yeah, and we tried, you know, just luring tactics. I remember we put a big stuffed monkey out on a pipeline and
Hmm.
put you know buried a trail camera inside of it, and boy, we've done so many different things. I'm trying to
Yeah. There was the
think of
camp,
you know.
the mock camp.
Oh yeah, the baby camp,
Yeah.
kid camp, I think we called it. Yeah, where we set up the tent and just had a loop of young children's voices like playing
Yeah.
on a 24-hour loop, and then cameras set up in the tent peering out. Tried that. Oh, I just had another one on top of my tongue that I can't remember. Oh, like when we did Truck for Truth, that was a whole different approach. Like you and I just hiked in,
Yep.
um, no ATVs, no vehicles, kind of didn't even know where we were gonna go. We just
Right.
kind of totally, totally just random access back in there, just walked, and you know we actually did have something happen on that trip
Right.
with the wood knock, but yeah, I think we just you know we would try one thing and we were like, oh, that didn't work. Let's come up with another plan, and you know it's I think pretty much, you know, until we stopped actually aiming like our trips based on research, up until that point, I felt like we tried something different like every time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. We
I
put up.
remember the one year we put the trail camera up in that tree upside down, like way up high, facing straight down, and we
Right.
took a limb and then we just you know I think we put a ham or something on the ground like on like 25 feet high that camera was and just got bare and just you know just doing things in a out of the box type thinking way, thinking that we were going to have to do something crazy to get some type of evidence because just the normal standard stuff um, wasn't producing anything for us.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and that's you know all with the thought process that they were there somewhere in the area,
Hmm.
and you know the reports were kind of dry up there for a lot of years, so maybe they weren't even around, and so we don't really know if all that testing and all the programs we were putting in place were even gonna matter, you know, if they weren't nearby. But
Right. Would you say that would how would you say we approached the whole Bigfoot phenomenon? We had never seen one. Nobody in our group had ever seen one. Would you say that we were extremely skeptical of our approach and our belief in them?
yep, I'd say, well, I can speak for myself, very skeptical. I think, yeah, you guys were there, maybe not, maybe I was even cynical for a lot of years,
Hmm.
but I think everyone had some skepticism, and yeah, there wasn't, it had to be something pretty major for us to, even lean towards calling something Bigfoot related,
Right.
because through all our years of, because we went on expeditions out out east a few times. We've met a lot of people, some really good people, and some people that just make you question what are we even doing, affiliating ourselves in this research with some of these people, because the craziness is it can get pretty out of control. And I think that's kind of stems from people having they glamorize it,
Yeah.
and they want everything to be Bigfoot because it brings a lot of attention.
Hmm.
And that wasn't us. We kind of, after that little stint, we really kept to ourselves, and we had websites, and those all came down, and yeah, just kind of kept to ourselves, and really kept that skepticism at a at the right level, I think,
Hmm.
and not falling for the BS.
Right. Yep, I would agree. According to my recollection, the last thing that happened to us was in 2018, and that was the event to where we were sitting at grouse camp and we heard something break a stick behind us, just about 20 or 30 feet or so, and then we heard it walk away from camp, and then I believe we heard a whoop. You heard a whoop vocalization the day before, or it could have actually been that same day. But after that, what would you say your hope was that we would find any significant evidence or have some type of an encounter happen to us while we were out there? Were you thinking that something could happen again, or were you starting to believe that, maybe they're not here, they've left, or maybe they're here, but they don't really want to interact with us? What were you thinking?
Yeah, I was thinking nothing was ever going to happen. I kind of didn't want anything to happen,
Hmm.
because I really enjoy that trip that we do up there because of the peacefulness, and it's really in the middle of nowhere. You you would be hard pressed to even see people in the general area when we're up there. So I really like the serenity of that, and yeah, I didn't want anything to happen for a long, long time, and so yeah, I was basically not not looking for that interaction. You didn't even have to repeat the question. I don't remember exactly what it was.
No, I think you answered
Oh,
that perfectly. Kind of what I was looking for is basically, well, I'm interviewing you here, but yeah, you weren't looking for something to happen. You weren't.
oh yeah, or did I think, nor did I really ever think anything was going to happen. I mean,
Right.
and all the things that did happen up until that point were not, they didn't have like that depth to them where you could say, well, that was definitely a Bigfoot. Like it was always, there was room for to question it, and
Sure.
because the circumstances were always maybe just a one-off thing, like you said in 2018 when I heard that whoop, and then had the weird thing happen at camp with the stick breaking and walking away. It's like we didn't have like thermal imaging, and we didn't have the stuff with us to like we did back in the early days, and we had our night vision cameras and all that. We're like waiting for that stuff to happen.
Right.
We just we weren't able to like document it and say with any certainty what it was. Or but yeah, I was more like I didn't want to be stressed out with having a situation up there,
Hmm.
and I like the fact that we can go up there and relax, and I didn't ever want like things watching us from the woods and stuff like that.
Right.
So
When you say you didn't want to be stressed out with the situation while up there, was that mainly due to its remoteness?
yeah, remoteness. You are, I even thought about it many times. I'd always leave my wife our GPS location up there, but even if some one of us would just get hurt, nothing to do with bigfooting, but just four wheeling, or you're getting someone out of there is going to be quite the feat.
Right. Yeah.
It'll be a task, and so it's kind of risky going back there and doing what we do, but
Yeah.
you know,
It would be a 3 mile ATV ride just to get to Blacktop, which could be at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours at night if you're trying to be safe. Right.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So it's
oh
very
yeah,
remote. Yeah. So in all the years that we've been up there, speaking of how remote it is, have we ever encountered another human being in the area where we camp and where we go?
yes. Occasionally, the one year we had a bear hunter, and that was the year we hiked in, I believe, and he saw our footprints in the muddy trail, and he followed them to our campsite because he was curious
Yeah.
who was back in his bear hunting area. But it depends. If you go up there on we've been up there on like Memorial Weekend or around a holiday weekend, there'll be people because there's a lot of touristy near that there's a lot of homes on that lake, and there's trail systems in the area, and people just will be out bombing around. But
Yeah.
that's only, you know, historically we've always tried to do our main trip in that first week in October.
Yep.
And yeah, it's super. You might hear an ATV off in the distance on one of the more like well traveled like logging roads for people who are grouse hunting, but there's not people just joyriding, and you know it's pretty rare to come across people back there,
Right. Yeah. Very rare.
which is another reason I know you and I talked about it. That's why we like going back there because
Right.
it's so remote and it's peaceful. You're not going to have to deal with people.
Exactly. That's the whole point of the trip is to get to not have to not see people, to not enjoy nature and not yeah, to get away for a while with no yeah.
Yeah, and um, uh, something that leads to that is every year when we take that last couple mile stretch back to our camp, it's always littered with fallen trees.
Right.
So how many trees have we cut off that trail? Especially the last few years, it seems like nobody else goes back there anymore. And I don't want to take up too much time, but to kind of explain that is that trail that we used to get to our camp used to go all the way through this area, and then it would hook up onto a road, and then you could like travel down the road and get on another trail system. Well, that road is now gated off, so I think the locals who probably used to travel that, or even the bear hunters, they don't even bother going back there anymore because they don't have access from that other side.
Right.
So I think we've noticed that once that trail got gated off, that I I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't think anyone's been on that back trail that we take in probably 3 years.
Right. How many trees
So
would you
yeah,
say? How many trees would you say are down on the trail that we have to deal with just in order to continue our travel each year?
oh, I'd say on average we probably cut 6 or 7.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I guess it all depends what the weather's like over the year, but this year was pretty bad. I know we cut a lot of trees to get back there
right,
on this last trip.
right. So basically, in the beginning, we were hard at it, and we were looking for evidence, and we were hoping for things to happen. And I would say in the last 5 to even at least 5 to 7 years, you and I um, started going out, just you and I. But prior to that, Brian was going with us, and we were a little bit more serious about wishing and hoping and trying to get interaction. In the last 5 to 7 years, just you and I have been going, and we haven't really been putting a whole lot of effort into the Bigfoot thing. We've mostly just been going back and relaxing and having fun, ATVing and hunting. Um, Even to the point to where we really weren't even putting out audio recorders every night, correct?
Correct.
When when do you think was the last time you put out an audio recorder at night?
Yeah, boy, I wouldn't even be able to tell you. My audio recorders are sitting in a box somewhere in my basement. It, oh, I would say 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay, so did you have
Yeah,
any audio recorders with you that trip?
on this last one,
Yeah.
no,
Okay, so you didn't even think about bringing them is what I'm
I
getting
did
at is
not.
right. Okay.
I didn't bring a video camera. I brought my phone. That was it.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, it's safe to say that we were never expecting anything to happen to the point where we weren't even putting out audio recorders anymore because when we do this trip and we spend 4 to 5 nights out there once a year for sure, and some years we've done 2 trips. The amount of things that we have had happen out there has been so seldom. Audio wise, I would say never. I mean, you heard the whoop one time, and we've had some wood knock interactions and things like that, but um, we've never really gathered any information from an audio recorder that's been really amazing. So we really weren't putting audio recorders out anymore, correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think those, unless we've missed something in reviewing them. Yeah, I don't recall ever hearing anything. Things that obviously we record the things that make us, have questions. Like footfalls and camp, but could be bear, could be anything.
right. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, nothing that was like, yeah, that would lead us to believe that it was definitely like a Sasquatch related thing.
Yeah, yeah. For the record, I ended up putting out my audio recorder the first night on this trip, which was Thursday night, and then I never did put it back out. So that's just for the record. All right, so let's go ahead and fast forward to the trip and Saturday evening in particular. We arrived Thursday. Uh, we set up camp, and then Thursday evening we put up the apples, and then Friday I checked on the apples. The apples are still hanging. That'll be in the documentary, and then Saturday day was rather uneventful, other than what happened on Saturday evening around 7 p.m. I told you that I saw something to the east in the Tamarax. Can you remember? Can you tell me what you remember that I said or and what I saw?
Sure. I remember you saying you saw something black cross between some of the tamarack trees, and I think I asked you, what you think it could have been a bear, and you're like, well, based off of the ground level and we know about the approximate height of those tamarack trees because we've been in there and in trips previous. But I remember you saying, "Well, my calculations are right. This black thing had to be between like 9 to 12 feet high." I was like, "Okay." And then I didn't put too much credence in it because you didn't seem like you just out of the corner of your eye you saw something black pass through there, and I think you were kind of questioning yourself too, without seeing it for sure. But I know you took your binoculars out and you were like focused on that area. I think you glassed it for like an hour,
Mhm.
if I remember right, 45 minutes or an hour. You were pretty intense, so I kind of knew that you probably saw something over there. Then and it wasn't just a shadow or something else. And and I do remember you were not feeling good after that. I know you said your stomach hurt, and so something changed in your I wouldn't say your physical well-being, but you just weren't feeling great after that. So I
Right.
don't know if something more subconsciously that maybe you saw something for sure and you didn't, you know, want to spook me or I don't know. But yeah, something changed and then I know you said you felt better later in the night, like maybe it was like more like around 11 o'clock at night. I think you said you were starting to feel better, but
Did
yeah,
I
I
seem
just
troubled at all by it initially after I saw it?
um no, other than the fact that you weren't feeling good.
Mhm.
I didn't feel like you were troubled unless you're because you were just basically telling me you didn't know for sure that it could have been maybe a shadow unless you're just what I'm saying. I
Right.
didn't see yeah, I didn't I wasn't concerned at all over it, so I don't think I felt like you were troubled.
Mm. Uh,
But definitely I just the fact that I you were glassing that area for so long,
mm,
looking back on it now, maybe because I think I was preoccupied doing something else. Maybe I was cooking. I don't remember. So I wasn't really paying too much attention. I know for sure you told me about it, and then I know you glassed that area for a long time.
yep. Um, so then after that event happened, we spent the evening at camp and we made dinner, and then that was the night when the windstorm came in. So we had a fire going, and the wind picked up, and we actually extinguished the fire because it was getting a little bit uh, unsafe. We didn't want to spread any sparks around
Hmm.
or start anything. So we actually put the fire out and we just sat around. And without the fire, we're pretty cold because temperatures were down in the 30s. And we actually went to bed a lot earlier than we normally do. I think we went to bed around 11 p.m. Sometimes we stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning. So that was kind of early for us. It was really windy. You really couldn't hear anything. I think some clouds moved in. So we went to bed. Um, that night, I heard a really loud thud and I felt a vibration. Um, that night of the storm, after we got out of the tent, um, which I think was probably around midnight because the trees were making a lot of noise and we were just checking the trees to make sure there was no dead trees that were going to fall on our tent. We went back into the tent and we went back asleep. The storm actually died down and it became rather still as it went towards morning. Do you remember hearing anything that night in the anything strange at all that you recollect now? But any recollection of anything weird happening that night?
None. No, I
Okay.
do not recall anything.
Okay. Do you sleep well out
Other,
there?
do I say that again?
Do you sleep well out there?
Yeah, I sleep pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I wake up from time to time, probably more than I do at home, but yeah, overall, I sleep pretty good. That that night was super windy. I mean,
Hmm.
I was I was so tired, I was dozing off, but yeah, it was so windy, and there was a concern of a branch breaking off and hitting the tent. So yeah, I do remember going outside and just double checking everything again because we kind of picked that spot because we felt safe there if there was a windstorm. But you're still in trees and there's always a potential. But yeah, I just remember we went out and surveyed the situation again and said, yeah, it should be okay. And then I ended up going back to sleep at some point. So I did not hear the loud thud, but I do remember you telling me about it. And
Hmm.
I also remember looking around because you said it was so loud the trees got to be laying right around here.
Hmm.
And we didn't find any newly fallen trees in the general vicinity of the camp. So that was really all I can recall from that particular situation.
Do you remember me telling you anything about me hearing anything else in camp that night?
Mm, I do not.
Okay. Do you remember me telling you about the animal that I thought I heard in camp, or that I thought I heard something in camp?
Um, on the windy night,
Well, there was a
on the
night.
set,
There was a night when I heard something in camp, and I just kind of trying to get your recollection of that. I just for a just to help you remember, this was the noise that I heard: something moving some cans around and something moving a plastic lid, a tote, and
oh
I
yeah,
heard
yeah, yeah,
breathing.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah. So what
Yep,
was
I
your
do remember. I
What
don't
was your
remember what
recollection?
night. I don't even. I remember you telling me that, but I don't remember what night it was.
Okay, that was that night, that morning.
Okay.
So what do you remember
All
me
right.
telling you about that subject or that event?
Yes, I do recall you saying that, and that I don't ever really think too hard about those kind of situations because I know an animal could eat any kind of animal could just rummage around in our stuff. So yeah, I wasn't thinking that that could even be possibly be a Bigfoot in situation with that. So I didn't really pay much attention to it.
In all the years we've been going back there, have we ever had a bear in our camp or any type of large nuisance animal?
No,
Okay.
that not that we know of.
Not that we know of. Yeah, we've never woken
Yeah,
up to food being opened up, spilled out, anything missing or nothing like that.
no. And what's so funny about that is I remember the first couple times going up there and we're like, we put all our food up in the trees. You remember that? Like
Yep.
we were so worried about bears coming into our camp. And then for a couple of years, I'm like, I don't think there's any bears up here. And then we did that big trail camera operation that year, and we caught bears on our cameras all over the place.
Yeah.
We were like, I was stunned at how many different bears we found on our trail cams,
Right.
but never, yeah, they have never given us a problem, and we do not put our food away.
Right. We
It's all
don't.
at ground level, and most times there's brats sitting on the grill
Right.
overnight, and yeah, nothing disappears.
Nothing disappears. Yeah. Right.
Hmm.
Good to note. Yep, we have not kept a tidy camp. We've pretty much never had an issue. Okay.
I
Um,
I think it goes to speak to also that the fact that there's just not a lot of people back there, and I think when people are in the area, the the wildlife kind of like clears out of town.
right.
We rarely see a deer. We can
Right.
hear wolves in the distance, and but yeah, it's just like nothing's curious about us. They want nothing to do with us.
Right. It's yeah.
They're
They're very
so I
wild
don't
out
think
there. They're
there's
not used to people. They're not used to getting snacks.
exactly
Yeah.
exactly. They're super cautious.
Yeah. The deer are extremely skittish out there. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. What would you say your general feeling was out there this trip prior to everything happening? Would you say it was different, or would you say it was exactly like past years when nothing happened?
It was, I'd say the only difference from past years was the one night just seeing the weird lights in the skies, which was very exciting. I thought that was a lot of fun. I haven't seen anything like that ever. But yeah, I felt calm, normal trip, having a great time, just enjoying, really enjoying myself up there. And yeah,
Yeah. What would
yeah.
you describe that you saw in the sky?
Um, yeah, the flashing lights that weren't moving was very odd. And then the one light that you saw that we started really focusing on, which was making all kinds of weird movements and then flashing in 3 second patterns and then changing color and then slowly, while flashing, dissipating away.
And it was stationary.
Yeah, I think maybe it moved a couple times in like a little triangular pattern, but for the most part stationary. I thought that, and then we saw those when that plane. So I don't know how many miles we are straight line from the Duluth airport, and we don't even know if it was the Duluth airport, but we did see a plane take off way far away with some other lights that came up with it,
Right.
and then they kind of left, and we saw the plane. The plane actually flew over us, and those lights kind of, I don't even remember what they did. It was so weird. We just seen a lot of weird stuff in the sky that trip, and I think we don't normally. I mean, that's how much we were relaxing. We're just laying back in our gravity chairs, just stargazing. You know,
And
it was super super cool.
there was a lot of things to see. I've never seen as much stuff in the sky like I have as that night. That trip, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think Northern Lights one night.
Hmm.
I think it was the night, maybe even Monday night.
Yeah, it was.
But yeah, so yeah, we were actually. I remember I was like looking forward to to get dark out and
Yep.
hoping there was no cloud cover.
Right. But other than that, it felt like a normal trip. There was no weird
Yeah,
feeling, no ominous feelings, no feelings of dread or feelings that, there was some presence there or anything like that.
nope,
Okay.
nope.
Okay.
Just felt like another normal trip.
Yep. All right. Let's move on to Monday evening. We went ATV riding and grouse hunting, and we got back to camp around 6 p.m. I was taking my game cams down back behind camp. We were packing up some stuff because we were going to leave the next morning. And you were in front of the tent, and I think you were spooling up some extension cord near the water. Um, I came up to you, and we had heard some things. What do you remember hearing off to the west?
Um, boy, I don't even know if I remember.
This was
Was
this was the weird vocalization, and then wood knocks that we thought were gunshots.
oh yeah, that we kind of. I remember hearing the vocalization, and then we heard some trumpeter swans, and I remember in my head I was like, "Well, that was probably just a trumpeter swan," but I don't. I mean, it was close enough to a trumpeter swan that I can't rule that out.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, that whole day was it kind of blurred out to me after what happened, so I don't really recall. I do remember riding the ATVs and coming back and picking up camp, and I remember spooling up the extension cord. But I just, yeah, when I heard those things, I still didn't like nothing in my mind was like, oh, that could be a Sasquatch, that
Right.
I just wasn't thinking that at all. We hear weird stuff out there all the time, but it was just nothing that was so spectacular that even made me second guess that it would be.
And that's how a lot of the things had been out there. Everything we heard was always like that, where it was something
Yeah,
weird, but you just you didn't focus on it, right?
right? I don't focus on that stuff. And we're so far back there. It's when 'cause a lot of times we hear what I think are probably gunshots, but they still sound similar to a wood knock. So you like, hey, did you hear that?
Yeah,
You know, or if you heard that down where I live, you'd be like, oh, it's a gunshot. But when you're up there, you know, it just has a different feel to it. So you always ask the other guy, hey, did you hear that?
yeah,
If it's something that's not normal that you could easily label. So yeah, I think we do a good job of that. We always kind of bring that kind of stuff up to each other.
right.
But yeah, as far as that particular, I'd be lying if I told you I remember it specifically. I just remember thinking trumpeter swan because we heard those shortly after
Sure.
the
Do you
vocalizations.
remember the weird vocalization and what it sounded like at all?
I don't.
Okay. Okay. No problem. Um, all right. So then that night we made a fire and we were watching the sky and we were watching the northern lights and we're enjoying the evening. I mentioned that I saw something on the shoreline about 100 yards away from us. Can you tell me what you remember me saying that I saw?
Yeah, I remember you said you saw something like an orange glow and um just yeah, an orange glow, and you thought maybe it was something from behind the tree line that was like maybe lighting the woods up like a plane light or something. Or but yeah, definitely you said it was orange and glowing.
Okay, perfect. Um, so then we went to bed, probably around 11 o'clock, and we were both being woken up in the middle of the night by the sound of waterfowl in that pond where we're camping. Can you explain to me what you were hearing coming from the waterfowl?
Sure. Yeah, I remember waking up at least two times to um, a flock of geese absolutely going berserk, just honking and splashing and wings flapping and yeah, just I don't know how many there were, but it sounded like there's like 20 geese and they were really just very vocal, just extreme honking.
Right.
And uh, I've I've heard that on trips past. Yeah, whatever. I fell back asleep and then it woke me up again for sure, and probably one other time. But yeah, yeah, just a bunch of geese. In my head I was like, oh, someone's probably trying to get them. I don't know.
Mm.
It didn't really cause me to concern, but it was so loud though, and it was close, so it was annoying at that point to me.
Right. Right. Yeah. Woke me up too. So the next thing that happened is I woke you up. You were asleep. Um, what do you remember happened next? From basically the second that I woke you up, what do you recall happening? Take as much time as you need.
Okay, so uh, this is pretty vivid to me. I can pretty much remember it like it was yesterday, but I remember you whispering, Toby, Toby, Toby. And I'm like, yeah. I like, like I think this was like three something in the morning at this point, and I was probably like in a deep sleep. And I was like, oh, what? I'm like in my head, I'm like, we gotta get up in a little bit and go. And then you're like, I heard wood knocks. And I'm like, oh, I think I said, really? And you're like, yeah. And then it couldn't have been 5 seconds later. And then I heard like double wood knock. And it was the loud one. Like there was one closer to us and it was super loud. I was like, my heart sunk in my chest. I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And then I heard a few more. And then I know we were just laying there listening. And definitely we're hearing like three different wood knocking locations. all different pitches and sound levels. And I was, oh yeah, the adrenaline was going big time. Um, I remember we did, I think you got your audio recorder out and it was cold. And we just sleep in our long underwear. So I remember you were out of your sleeping bag and you were just shivering trying to get your batteries in your audio recorder. And you got that set up. And boy, I don't know how many wood knocks happened during that time. It was quite a few. And we were both kind of laying there, like contemplating what to do. And I think at first we were fine just to lay in the tent and listen to them until the I'm just gonna call it like the third knocker, and maybe to give people kind of an understanding where the knocks are coming from. So as I'm laying in the tent, my head is facing towards the door of the tent, which faces towards the pond that we camp on. So I'm going to say the first knocker is like straight out past our tent door on the other side of the pond. The second knocker would be off to the right, like 50 yards, and then the third knocker is off to the right of that, and even more like at about a 90-degree angle from the front of the tent to our right. So the first knocker was very loud, super aggressive, just hammering the tree and doing multiple knocks at a time. And then the second knocker, I remember, would just like do single knocks. And then this, the third knocker, it was coming closer to our camp because every time it would take a pause, it would knock again, it would be closer. And what unnerved me the most was it was knocking super quiet. So the first knocker would like rap on the tree really hard, and this one would just like dunk, dunk. And I'm like thinking to myself, this thing is coming in to our campsite. Like it's close because I can hear it just lightly tapping the tree, so it can't be far away. So I don't know if I convinced you or not, or if you wanted to, but I'm like, I'm getting out of the tent because I kind of felt like a sitting duck in there. So I got dressed. While I remember while I'm getting dressed, I can still hear knocks out there. We're making noise in the tent at this point. Like I'm not trying to be quiet or sneaky anymore. I'm actually trying to make noise because I was uh, kind of scared. I didn't know what was going on,
Right.
what the intentions were. So first thing I did when I got to the tent is I lit the fire, and I kind of just stood by the fire, and the I'm gonna say like the primary knocker I think backed away at that point because his knock or its knock wasn't as prevalent anymore, or it wasn't hitting the tree as hard. So at that point, whatever their intention was, they knew we were there, and things did kind of settle down. After that, there was, you know, obviously you recorded a knock on your phone while we were both outside by the fire, so they were um, still doing wood knocks,
Hmm.
even though our presence was known
Right.
at that point.
So let's go
And
back
I don't
to
want to get too far ahead. Yeah, if you
yeah,
want me to back up.
let's go back to the moment that I woke you up. You
Hmm.
woke up and you were hearing the wood knocks.
Hmm.
While we were talking, there was a noise just outside the tent on my side of the tent. Do you remember hearing anything just outside the tent?
Um, I remember hearing something. It sounded like shuffle away through the leaves to
Can
the
you
side of the tent.
can you explain that anymore about what that
Um,
sounded like to you?
well, if I had to picture it in my head, I would have guessed it would have been like maybe a beaver. I didn't really hear footfalls. I just heard like a shuffling,
Sure.
like maybe even a little bit of a
Yeah. Yeah.
dragging steps, maybe.
Hmm. Gotcha.
But
That's
yeah,
that's what I
I
heard as
was
well.
I was in total that didn't even concern me at all.
Yeah,
I was
same
like,
here.
I'm hearing these wood knocks and they are blasting these that they're just that main one was just blasting that tree. Like it was crazy.
Yeah,
You know, and I heard this the shuffling thing next to the tent. That was before I decided I was getting out.
right,
So at that point, I was still, like somewhat comfortable just listening to these things.
right,
And I didn't feel like there was one just outside the tent, like moving away. But who really knows?
right. So the wood knockers that you heard, what would you say the distance was of the main wood knocker, the second wood knocker, and the third wood knocker from our tent?
Um, I feel like because there's water separating the area from where the main wood knocker came from, I want to say it was 200 yards. And I'll say the second knocker would have been a little farther away because of the terrain over there. I would guess that one at like 300 yards. And then the third wood knocker at the last time it knocked, I would say it was probably like 75 to 100 yards away.
Hmm. Okay,
Maybe a little closer. It's very hard to say with specificity because it was dead silent. It was so quiet, and just how lightly that last one was hitting the tree, it might have even been closer. Really could have been 50 yards, but if I had to guess, I'd say it's more like 75 to 100.
sure. Yep. So you came out of the tent first once we decided that we were gonna come out. Like you said, you started a fire. I stayed in the tent and I did some things while you were outside of the tent by yourself, alone. Did you hear anything or see anything out there before I came out?
Um, Before you came out, I did not see anything. I I did hear a hissing at one point, but I don't remember if you were out of the tent yet or not. I was really at that at first initial like 15 minutes out of the tent, I was very focused, like watching that ridge line on the other side of the pond. Even though it was dark out, I was still like I was just craning my ears over to that area.
Hmm.
So I wasn't super paying attention to you. I just remember you um, video recording at some point. So
What did
I can't
the
say how long you were out there,
what did
but
the hissing sound like?
it sounded like if you ever have a cat hiss at you when it's mad,
Hmm.
like two of those, like like it was facing us and it was like mad.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
That's weird.
and it
Okay.
came from like the beaver house, which is in direct line with that first wood knocker.
Hmm.
It'd be kind of, I wouldn't say right in the middle, but
Pretty close. Well, that's
pretty close.
interesting. That's interesting that if that was a beaver, I imagine that there's two beavers that live in that beaver den, and we heard we both heard the subject on the side of the tent run away, scurry or
Hmm.
shuffle away, and it did sound to me like something was dragging. That um, could have been a beaver. Well, interesting that there might have only been one beaver, so it kind of. And if you heard the hissing, it could have been in its beaver house. So, what was the second subject that we heard run away from camp? If it wasn't a beaver, if one was on the beaver house, so that's
Right.
just an interesting piece of information.
Yeah. And I tried to do some research on that, and there's not a lot about. It's not like just a well-known fact that beavers hiss.
Hmm.
If it does happen, it seems like it's pretty rare because like it's very hard to find any information. But it says I did find something that says they can hiss, but how
Sure.
often they would do it or why they would do it. I really, there's just not a lot of information to be found on that topic. So I don't know, but it definitely sounded, um, it was like it was upset, whatever it was.
Hmm.
And I could, in a picture in my head, I could totally see a Bigfoot sitting over there doing that also. So I'm not going to rule that out, but yeah, I just wouldn't know for sure.
Sure. Sure. Okay. So you talked about the wood knocking subjects across the pond that were on the other side, about 200 yards away. What do we know? What do you know about that area over there? Have we ever been over there?
We, I think one spring trip, we were back, not in that exact spot, because it's a ridge line that runs. It's higher ground there, and it's just heavily forested. So I think there are some trails that maybe were like, I want to say a quarter mile back from that and to the left, because I remember we actually found our way onto that beaver pond in spring one year because everything was iced over, so we were able to cover a lot of ground. But yeah, it's just a ridge line there,
Okay. And
just heavily wooded.
when you say we were over there in spring, why were we over there in spring? Is there something significant about why were we only over there in spring?
We were just riding trails.
Yeah,
We were able to go to so many places that we can't normally go to because of the boggy terrain,
exactly.
and
Right.
everything was frozen, so we could drive over all the bogs and we could link up with all the snowmobile trails. Whereas when we normally go in October or anytime it's warm, you can't get through those bogs
So
unless it's super dry, and even then, it's just not fun. It's
So, right, we can't even basically where we heard these two wood knockers on the other side of the pond, we can't even get over there during summer months, correct?
Yeah, correct, unless you were hiking through just the nastiest, boggiest stuff. You'd
Right,
probably be waist deep in peat moss
right,
or peat, and yeah, not gonna happen.
right. In all the years that we've been back there and we've been camping at that spot, have we ever heard anybody over there? Have we ever been like, oh
No,
yeah, you're right? No,
I've never heard anyone over on that side.
right. And during this trip, how many wood knocks or vocalizations do you remember me doing this whole time we were there?
I don't remember. Maybe you might have done one like whoop the first day or two, just kind of fun like during the day.
Hmm.
And then I think the first night, you brought like two, like, I don't know if they were axe handles or shovel handles,
Right,
because you thought, yeah. And I know you tried to do a wood knock with them. I think you did two of them and they broke.
right,
I don't recall you doing any more after that.
right. I don't have any recollection of doing any more either. So the only wood knocks I remember doing was Thursday night, where I did those four wood knocks that I got on camera. And like you said, one of the sticks broke, so I threw them in the
Yeah,
fire.
and they were like not impressive wood knocks. they,
They
they
weren't.
weren't. They didn't do anything. They were
They
just like
weren't. Yeah.
clack, like, yeah, like maybe light clacks.
Yeah, it was
They didn't
like
emanate very well.
clack, clack, clack. Yeah, it was pretty lame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a nice try though. I mean, it was good theory. Like,
Right.
you got some good hardwood, and you think they're gonna resonate really well, but yeah, it just didn't work out.
Right. So, a lot of people who hear this story are going to question us. And I think that they're automatically going to assume that there was a group of people hoaxing us by doing wood knocks um, for us to scare us or to hoax us. But the truth is that we barely did any wood knocks while we were there. So these hoaxers, these would be hoaxers, wouldn't know that we were there to try to have a wood knocking event with purported Bigfoot. So, can you explain to people about this idea of someone trying to hoax us where we were and give me your whole interpretation of that?
Sure. Well, without actually seeing what was doing the wood knocking, can I rule it out 100%? No. I'm pretty much 99.9% sure though it wasn't people. But yeah, there's like a 0.1% that I just because I didn't have visual of what was doing it. So for people to be boy, it's a I could go on for a while. There's so many variables that don't fit for it to be people.
Go ahead
For
and
one,
explain it.
yeah, sure. So first and foremost, someone would have to know that we were even um, had any kind of um, knowledge about Bigfoot or that that we've been back there 15 years ago looking for Bigfoot. Like they'd have to know we were back there. They'd have to know where our camp is. They would have to um, traverse some nasty terrain and walk because we would you could hear if there was an ATV or any type of vehicle running, we would have heard it, especially those last few days where it was just so quiet. But then you'd have to get at least three people together to do this to hoax us, and I possibly there was a fourth knocker, quite possibly because I remember hearing a knock that could have been the second knocker just hitting a different tree, but it sounded farther off. So you'd have to have 3 to 4 people get together, walk in from probably the nearest trail to get to that location on that side. It's probably a 45-minute hike, and then arrive there at 3 something in the morning, do a bunch of crazy knocks, get really close to our camp, not knowing if we're armed and what we're going to do. And then we wake up, and then you kind of stop knocking, and then we don't hear you walk away through, marsh grass and dry. It is super dry up there. All the leaves are super crunchy. It's
Mm-hmm.
dead quiet. And yeah, so there's really even the people. So when we go up there, we park at a person's house and we use that property as just a place to park our trailers and everything. They don't even know where we camp. So even if there was talk that there's some guys back in this area, you just don't know where we are. You would have to go through a ton of trouble to do that, and it makes zero sense because all the all the factors I just explained, it just don't add up. It's 30 degrees out, and to come and just do some wood knocks and then leave,
Right,
or just stop. Like we literally sat outside for 3 hours and never heard anything move in there.
right.
So yeah, it for it to be people, it'd be like I said, maybe it's a 0.1% chance.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't even think it'd be possible.
And you mentioned the two woodknockers on the other side of the pond, and then you mentioned the woodknocker that was close to us that was doing the light wood knocks. Can you explain the significance of the closer wood knocker who is doing the light wood knocks in relation to the other two subjects and what it would require for a person to get in position to do a hoax on us?
Yeah, so the third wood knocker, if you were going to not cross the the wetland area, would have to walk around on a trail system, probably an extra 4 miles
By
to get
themselves.
around by themselves to get over to where we were hearing the knocks. Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, it to say it's people, boy, that's that would almost make you crazy to try and believe that.
And then after they did their said hoax and did their wood knocking event that lasted just a minute or two, what would that third person have to do to rejoin their companions to link back up with them?
They would have to cross a lot of water and peat and heavy brush, and there'd be splashing, and there's no way it would anyone would be able to move through there without us hearing it. Even if even if they retreated back the other way into the hard land, into the wooded area, that we, the leaves, like I said, it was so dry, you would have heard. We didn't hear anything.
Right. So we never heard anybody. We never heard any noise through the bog. We never heard any branches breaking. We never heard any water sloshing. We never heard a four-wheeler or anything like that after this event.
Nope.
So if the person didn't cross the bog, which was it was 30 degrees outside and it was really cold, they would have gotten wet. They would have had to walk
Mm-hmm.
around for 4 to 5 miles just to rejoin their companions because it's a huge bog, and where we are happens to be the most narrow point. And a beaver has created a beaver dam there, but
Mm-hmm.
still, a person would have to walk through that. So you
Yeah,
know,
with no headlamp or
with
no light source.
right,
So super dangerous and sketchy. You're gonna do all that to go try and, I don't know, get a reaction
hmm
from some guys camping.
right. And if
Yeah.
it was a group of people who were hoaxing us, do you think they could have produced the sound of the wood knocks that we heard across the pond? Do you think they could have? Do you think they could have produced the sound and actually done what we heard?
I mean, I guess it's possible. I can't rule it out, but it was pretty impressive.
What would a person have to do if you were the closest wood knocker and the loudest one? What would a person actually have to do to reproduce what we heard? Like how would a
Um,
person mechanically do that?
yeah, you'd it just from the how fast it was knocking, I feel like it would have to be like a one-handed swing. Because I think if you would wind up every time, like with, think like a baseball bat swinger,
Right.
I don't think it could have got the same frequency because this was like pretty rapid and it was just so impressive. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I can't rule out a person that do that, but
So a person
I
would need
wouldn't.
something like a baseball bat, and they would need to hit a tree
Yeah,
rapidly 3 to 4 times with one arm, just
yeah,
hitting it as hard as they possibly can.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Right.
Yep. I don't think those audio images in my brain will ever go away. It was just so crazy how loud that one was, and yeah, such intention behind it. Like now,
Mm.
whether that was focused at us or not, I don't know about that, but it was you. I'd be willing to bet you could have heard that like 4 miles away.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
just because of the circumstances of it being super quiet. Like you can hear the ringing inside your ears. It was
It
so
was very
quiet.
it was very quiet. And did we ever we never heard a branch break. We never even heard a
Mm-mm.
rustle.
Nope.
No, right. So it's almost like they stayed there after they were done and they just did not move, correct?
Correct.
Right, right.
The only thing that I noticed was the main knocker, because the other two, there no more second or wood knocks after I got out of the tent. The only knocks I heard was from that first wood knocker location,
Hmm.
and it either backed out farther from us or it stopped hitting the tree as hard, because
Right.
those definitely that one definitely fell off in intensity.
Hmm. Can you explain that, Woodnock? So I came out of the tent to join you, and I started shooting a video, and this video will be in the documentary. And while I was doing it, we heard a woodknock. What did it sound like to you? Was that the woodknock you were
Um,
just describing?
yes, yeah, it sounded farther away, maybe on the other side of that ridge line, like it, maybe from it went down the back side of that ridge
Hmm.
and maybe knocked one more time. It kind of, if I could, in hindsight, I could kind of say it was like maybe like a farewell knock, like, oh, okay, see you guys, we're out,
That's it.
you know.
Right. We're done.
And it was shortly after that where I saw the orb go over the beaver pond, and after that orb, yeah, there was nothing else happened after that. It kind of like that was it just like sealed it up.
Can you
And
explain the orb?
sure, I was looking out over the beaver pond towards where that first wood knocker was, and I saw a white bluish ball of light. Um, it like appeared out of thin air, and it was moving from my left to right. It was probably 45 to 50 yards away, right over the water. And I saw it for about 4 seconds. And in that time, it probably traveled about 30 feet, and then it just dissipated while it was still moving. And that was the end of that. I'd say it was about the size of it, maybe between the size of a golf ball and a hard ball,
Wow.
somewhere in that area. So yeah, just a very cool, like liquidy looking bright light. Never really seen anything like that before.
Wow. Was it a smooth travel? Did it move up and down at all, or
Yes.
was it a completely
No,
flat line?
just a linear movement from left to right, straight line.
Would you say it was something you've never seen before that was totally bizarre, out of
I've
this world?
I've never seen that before, ever.
So as soon as
Yeah,
you saw it, you knew it was something different.
absolutely.
There's no question in your
There,
mind.
there's no question. It was, I want to say it was about 15 feet off the top of the water. So, 15 feet in the air.
Wow.
And I can remember seeing its reflection in the water
Oh
as it
wow.
was going across. So,
Wow. I wish I
yeah.
had saw
And
I
then,
wish I had saw that. Go ahead.
yeah, I think you were behind me. I don't remember what you were doing.
Yeah.
So by the time I told you about it, yeah, I didn't even say anything till after it dissipated already. I
Yep.
was just like, ooh. It was like I said, it was only like 3 or 4 seconds, and then it was done. So
Right.
yeah, that was pretty crazy
Is
to
that the
me.
is
I
that the
know.
craziest thing you've ever seen in your life?
As far as stuff I can't explain, yeah, yep,
Hmm. Yeah. So, how has this event affected you? It's been 3 months since this happened. Can you explain to me what you felt from then until now?
sure. Um, so like those first few weeks, I guess I was really questioning just um the natural law of things, because now, I always kind of had a hunch that there was these things out there, and then to have that realization that, okay, now I'm like I said, I'm 99.9% sure that's what happened, especially with the whole orb situation and doing research about these orb sightings around these types of encounters. I
Mm,
just don't. I don't think it's just some guys out in the woods hoaxing us, and then I see an orb. But like, yeah. So yeah, it changed my perspective on just how I viewed things, and to know that there's things out there that we don't know anything about. It's definitely weird. It was exciting because um, I called a lot of people who I know are very interested in it, and I told them it was fun to retell the encounter, and it kind of made me feel a little better to let other people know that, kind of just talk about it and get it off my chest too. But so yeah, there was a lot of excitement, and then as the weeks went by, I guess it kind of just, I don't know, I don't. I guess I'm not super excited about it right now. I'm kind of like neutral on it. I don't know what to think about this situation. I don't know if I really care to find out more, or if I'm just gonna leave it as it is. And um, yeah, I'm very, I guess neutral is the best word. I'm kind of numb to it right now.
hmm.
I don't know, don't know which way to go with it.
Right.
Um, yeah, that's I'm trying not to get too taken away by it, but I'm not discounting it either. I guess what I'm trying to say.
Sure. So now that you 99.9% believe that what happened to us was Sasquatch, and I guess you could call yourself a believer and an experiencer now. Um, now that you um, now that you know that fact, do you feel like you're carrying around like a bit of a burden that you know that these things exist and most of the population doesn't
Hmm.
believe in Bigfoot? And do you feel a certain way? Like, do you feel like you need to tell people about it? Or do you feel like you have any desire
Um,
to try to convince people? And
I have not felt that desire. Now, if someone would ask me with like genuine curiosity, yes, I would definitely try to convey to them that these things are real. But as far as like the general population, I don't feel like it would even matter that much for me to try and convince anyone. I think people are maybe curious, but I don't think if you know, just in the society we live in, it's hard to take people's word on anything.
right,
So the people that know me and trust me, they believe me. So that's all that I guess I can really do. I don't know. I don't want to scare people from going out in the woods because I don't feel like that's the appropriate response to it. So I don't want to bring it up in that fashion.
right.
But the people I've told, some of them are like, well, they want to go get them, or they want to come with, and they want to have this experience, and which that's fine and dandy, I guess. But until it happens to you, I think you would feel differently about it. But it all depends what kind of inner emotion that comes from the experience.
Mm,
Some people might want more of that. And for me, if you said the same situation was going to happen again, I'd probably decline it
mm,
because, like, I felt very vulnerable, felt, unsure of what was going to happen. Uh, just, like we talked about earlier, we're in a very remote spot. Something would happen to one of us, it'd be an interesting situation to put it mildly. But yeah, I didn't feel, after everything was said and done, I didn't feel threatened. But at the time, just from, you get awakened out of a dead sleep and you hear these loud crashing wood knocks around your camp. It seems very menacing
Right.
at the time, but I'm rambling on. So yeah, I
No, this
I
is good.
guess yeah, I don't feel like I need to tell the world about it. I think there's plenty out there already, but if I had people close to me or even acquaintances and they brought it up, I would tell them.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure.
Would you have like would you have liked it to have not have happened, or are you glad that it happened to you?
Um, I'm glad that it happened in hindsight. So because we've always had that inclination and we always speculated about them, but now to know with almost 100% specific, I got a trouble with that word today. Specificity that
Yeah.
they're real, and I can't, like I told you before, I think I'd be kind of crazy to try and to put people in that position to be doing that. So I think
Mm,
it makes me more sane to just kind of call it for what it is and say that, yeah, there was definitely at least three Sasquatches around our camp that night.
do you feel crazy
So,
saying those words coming out of your mouth?
no, I do not.
That's good.
Yeah, because you know I was there. I
Right.
know what happened. So, and it was like I said, now in hindsight, it was a unique thing that it's probably just a rare thing for people like us to experience something like that.
Yeah.
Even in the age we live in, where everyone's out there trying to have those types of encounters, and maybe they are more prevalent in some areas, but for us, that you know, maybe one or two other times where we heard a wood knock, and then that was it, and it was nothing super intense
Hmm.
compared to what happened on that Tuesday morning. It's just a night and day thing, and it could be a life changing thing. I don't want it to be that for me, but I just now that I know they're real, I just accept that
Right.
and live my life accordingly to the
Hmm.
extent that we know zero about them. But yeah,
Do you?
there'll be a lot of unanswered questions, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. Looking back, if you have some time since you've had some time to think about it, do you think that the wood knocks were directed for us and everything was done for us, or do you think that there was another purpose for what they were doing?
Yeah, I in my deep down, I just feel like they weren't directed at us. But I'm basing that off of my thought process if I was one of them.
Hmm.
So I'm just basing it off. I hear the loud geese. I feel like they were riling the geese up for some reason, or maybe trying to hunt them. And our campsite just happened to be there, and we kind of got caught up in the middle of it. And the only reason I feel like that is because once we made ourselves known and we woke up and we came outside, it really diminished. Like
Yeah.
I didn't even hear this other two wood knockers anymore after that. And I just felt like, well, if they were there to try and move us out, I think they would have carried on or maybe stepped it up a little bit at that point. But I kind of felt like they were like, oh, okay, I guess this is ending here.
Right.
Like no more hunting here.
Had those two really loud wood knockers been, oh, say 20 yards away from our tent and were doing what they were doing, uh,
Yeah.
how do you think how do you think you would
Oh,
have
that would
reacted?
boy, I think I'd probably been out of the tent a lot faster. Um, that probably been a fearing, fearing a lot more.
Terrified could be a word.
Terrified. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think terrified would have been a good word. I mean, I was near terrified just from what really happened. So if they were 20 yards from us, then I know they're close because we got water on our whole south side of the camp there.
Right.
So they have to be in close then if it's 20 yards and we don't have retreat. I mean, if they're in that close, that's our retreat.
Right.
They're in our retreat already. We can't go the other way. So you're stuck there. And then yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have never really planned for that type of situation. I don't. That's the kind of stuff I don't want to have happen. That's why I think you and I kind of agreed we didn't want to like stir it up or try to have a situation happen
Aggra-
by,
Aggravate or right. Yep.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's
Yeah, and I
yes.
think we should also mention too that I think it was it Monday or Sunday where we did target practice. So there was one of the days where we shot off. We were shooting guns for a few hours,
Yep.
and so if these things were even in the general area, they probably knew we were there somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know if they specifically knew we were where we were camping, but you could also assume that they knew exactly where we were. And the other theory would could easily be drawn out too, where they did know we were there and they were trying to get us to leave. So,
Right.
which I think is a unique situation because we ended up leaving that day because we were leaving anyway. So
Right.
in there, if they think that way, they could be like, well, that worked,
Right.
you know.
Exactly. We behaved
So,
exactly the way they wanted us to. We
yep,
came out of the tent and stayed up and started packing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you could the theories could go forever on why it happened, or because even like I know you mentioned that one day, well, we stayed longer than we normally do.
Yep.
I think we stayed a day longer, and you had mentioned that previous trips, if these things know we're there all the time or once a year at least, and they know we only stay for 3 or 4 days, and now we're staying longer, and that triggered them. Like who knows?
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Exactly. Right.
super cool experience.
Yeah. I guess.
Very. I'm just. It's nice to now know that they're
mm,
really there or
right.
that they exist. These things. It's not just urban legend. It's not just weird people making up stories.
That's a good point. Yeah. You
So
can
I
kind of
like
put
to
it to
have
bed
that.
in your mind.
Yeah,
Yeah. Right. I feel the same way. I like being on the inside now, knowing being in the inner circle rather than being on the outside, giving it any thought
yep,
and wondering if the whole thing is real and going through these ups and downs of one year I believe, and then the second year I'm like, no, I can't be, and then the next year I'm like, yeah, maybe it is. Now it's
right,
like I don't even really need to think about it anymore. I know it's real. You know.
exactly. And that's part of like when you're doing the research part of it, and you have such dry spells, and you're just like, yeah, they're not real.
Yep.
You know, this is just stupid. What are we doing? And
Exactly.
then, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. And
then you
that's
have,
that's a perfect example of where we were at when this all happened. We were like, nothing's going to happen. Nothing has happened. So, like, kind of done with this.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then through it all, at the end of the day, we just found this really unique area that we can all get to and go have a nice camping trip and relax and not be pestered or bothered by people, or just that we found that, and that's why we kept going there.
Right.
And then this just happened,
Yeah, and
you know.
we found friendship, and we found good memories, and we've created a yearly trip, and we've a lot of good things have come out of it um, through the whole
Yeah,
adventure. So that's the other really good side to think about it, is it's just been very rewarding in other ways, and very a real blessing in other ways. So
yeah, totally,
yeah,
totally a blessing. Yeah.
yeah. My last question is, now that you've had some time to think about it, have you been able to come to any type of conclusion as to what Bigfoot could possibly be?
Boy, I think it's probably seeing the orb and then reading other people's accounts of the orb and kind of delving into this type of activity that surrounds orbs. It's probably really even made it foggier for me to try and think what they are. Because, I mean, I think it's very possible that these things can travel in between dimensions. I don't see how that's not can't be put on the table at this point,
Sure.
especially not hearing anything move for 3 hours after the wood knocks. And yeah, the orb really kind of just messed that all up for me. I always kind of felt like it was just a flesh and blood being, and it still may be, but I kind of felt like they were living in the same reality that we were, and
Mm,
I don't. I think that's kind of out the window. So what they are, yeah, I wouldn't even be able to guess. Maybe a flesh and blood being that just has the extra capability to be able to step in between 3D and 4D dimension. I don't
right.
know.
Yeah.
Couldn't tell you, but yeah, it's.
It's a
I
question
think,
we'll never be able to answer.
yeah, probably not. Maybe. I mean, technology is growing by leaps and bounds, and maybe we can at some point figure that out. But I think it does explain probably the phenomenon over the last 50 years of what people report. I think, when people say they see them here 1 second and they're gone, or tracks disappearing, or these things popping up out of nowhere, or these things following researchers home,
Hmm.
50 miles away, like it makes the most sense. And I think scientists have already proven that there's at least 11 dimensions that they can mathematically prove. So um, I'd probably lump it into that category, that it's just a type of creature that can, excuse me, that can manipulate time and space. So
Mm,
otherwise, I don't know how else to explain it,
yeah.
what they're capable of doing.
Right. So not just a dumb monkey that we haven't discovered yet.
No, yeah, I don't think so. I
Yeah.
think I'm gonna rule that out.
Yep.
And that's if it was just a dumb monkey, they'd have one. They'd have the remains of one by now,
Right.
or even a live one. I mean, even if it was a smart monkey, they'd have one.
Yeah.
Someone would have got one by now. So
Yeah.
there's something extraterrestrial, and I don't mean alien about it. Well, I do mean alien technically, but there's something that our natural law here on Earth doesn't recognize yet.
Mm. Well, cool, Toby. Thanks. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, that was all good stuff, and I agree with most of the stuff you said. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, I'm glad we could talk about it and kind of recap it after, well, how long has it been? About 2.5 months now?
Yeah, we haven't even spoken on the phone about it.
No,
Yeah.
no, just I remember that day I was so amped up after I knew I was going to be safe.
Yeah.
Like, what did we get? Like 3 hours of sleep, and
Yeah.
then I drove back, 7 hours back home. I was not like tired at all. Like I was so amped up. I don't even think I got to bed till that night till like 11 or 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, just quite the experience. Like something I just never ever thought would have happened. And short of actually just seeing one standing there, I mean, that was pretty awesome experience.
It was. It really was. It was really yeah, we both said we were kind of beside ourselves to where we couldn't really quite uh,
Yeah,
put any words to it. And it was pretty awesome. Just it was awesome what we got to experience. It wasn't one or two wood knocks. It wasn't something like that. It was probably, I don't know, did you hear 10, 15 wood knocks?
I would say roughly in that ballpark.
Yeah.
That's, and I know you said you heard at least 10 before I even woke up.
Yeah.
You
It
were hearing
was
them for a little bit, trying to wake me up. Like I said, I was probably deep sleep.
yeah,
But
it was insane rapid fire for like 30 seconds. It was pretty nuts.
I often wonder what the casual person, let's just say there was some just people who not really interested in Bigfoot, didn't really learn anything about the phenomenon, and they were in that situation. I wonder how they would have reacted if they would have been like, oh, whatever, some weird banging on trees out in the woods.
Right.
If
The,
they would have even been on like as high alert as we were, you know,
yeah, they would have
because I
to
think
assume that it was a
you and
group.
I both immediately knew what it was.
Exactly.
Like there was no question what
Nope.
was going on.
No. We knew exactly what it was. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's almost like the very first wood knock I heard, I knew exactly what it was and I knew exactly what was doing it. There was no question as to whether it was a person doing it or any other natural thing. I absolutely knew what it was by the power and the percussion of it and just yeah, exactly the things you said, just the power of it. It can't be replicated by people. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean the main one, yeah, would have been pretty difficult. The one that was closing in on us that could, they were just little thuds on the tree, which is very freaky. When I think about it, even today, I can hear them plain as day in my head.
Yeah, because we
Just freaked me out.
yeah.
Like
Well,
the
if
loud one across the water, like okay, it's across the water. Like I don't think it's gonna come and get me because it's just gonna have to forage water for a long ways.
yeah,
So yeah, bang away over there. It sounds menacing, but it sounds kind of cool. But yeah, the one just oh
what's funny is when you listen to the audio, and we have multiple recordings of that close wood knocker. We have like six from that guy. There's a wood knock that it does, and then I think you stand up immediately, like, okay, I'm going outside. Like
hmm
it's like you had had enough. You were like, all right, that's it. Like as soon as it did it,
yep,
you were like, that's it.
yeah, and I tell you why I did it because it got closer.
Yeah.
I could definitely differentiate from its position. I think it did it 3 times in
Mm.
three separate like double knocks,
Yeah.
if I remember right, or maybe they were single. But each time, each pause, it was getting closer. Then the last, it paused again, and then when it knocked, it was even closer, and that was
Yeah.
that's when I had enough because I'm like, this thing's just gonna keep coming. Like
Right.
I don't want it that close.
Can I tell you
But
what my theory is on the whole event?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So,
I'd like to hear. I know what your initial thoughts were. I'm curious if it changed at all, if it's the same.
um, Well, I do think that they were hunting the geese. I don't think that they were directed towards us. I think our initial thought was that they were hunting the geese. And then, same day, later in the day, I started thinking, no, I think it was even once we got on the phone with Brian, which was a couple hours after, that I was thinking, oh man, maybe these were indicated towards us. But I'm back to thinking that I'm pretty certain that they were hunting geese and that they were going about their business and that we happened to be there. And my thought is that when they're in the area and somebody like us come, that they're constantly watching us and they're constantly observing our movement and our action. They're basically patterning us, and I think that's what they do with everything, is that they pattern everything. They observe and they watch, and then that's how they maintain their secrecy, and that's how they are able to hunt, is by being extremely vigilant. So they probably always had like a watcher on us, and I think they've probably been watching us ever since day one. I think they just haven't wanted to ever interact with us for whatever reason. But I think we happen to be in the right place at the right time. So my theory on the whole weekend is that we arrived and that they were already hunting this bog and this slough days past prior to us ever being there. So they were already we came into their hunting grounds. They were familiar with us. They had watched us. They had seen us in the past. They knew what our intentions were. We come in on ATVs. We do a little grouse hunting. We sit at camp. We light fires. We eventually go to bed. We're really not a threat. We're not doing anything to really bother them. But for whatever this point, they needed to hunt and they needed to do their business, so they just decided to go ahead with us there or not. So my thought is that on the third night, there was one in camp. What I heard something next to the tent moving cans around. I heard something trying to open a tote, and I heard something sniffing, to the point to where I was fully awake and I was trying to find my flashlight. I keep all my stuff in my sleeping bag, like my headlamp, my flashlight, my cell phones, and even a firearm. Keep it warm and keep it all so it's handy. I started searching around in the sleeping bag for my high powered flashlight because I have a vent right next to my wall of the tent right there. And my thought was, to be completely honest with you, I thought there was a Sasquatch out there. I mean,
Okay.
that's just what my mind thought. I'm not saying there was anything that it did that tells me it was, other than the fact that we've never had a nuisance bear. And I heard sniffing. I heard something sniffing, and I heard that plastic tote being trying to be opened. So I thought, if I take this flashlight and I lift it up to this vent and I blast the light out there, it might scare it away, because I was getting pretty unnerved and pretty uncomfortable, because it was right on my side of the tent. So it was basically
Yeah.
right, like, just a foot away from me. So as I started either unzipping the sleeping bag, making some noise in there, that's when the thud happened. And that's when I felt the
Oh.
vibration. And as soon as I did that, the subject that was right next to the tent went completely still, absolutely still. So I think there was maybe a juvenile Sasquatch in our camp searching around for food, for sweets. And I think there was a watcher watching it like a parent. And as soon as I started making movement, which also probably correlated with me stopping snoring and making sleeping sounds, heavy breathing, it knew that I was awake. So or it could maybe sense my intentions, and it did a foot stomp and sent a vibration. I stopped doing what I was planning on doing, and that subject, whatever it was, never made another move, to the point to where I just laid there until I fell back asleep. Never heard another thing. So,
Mhm.
so then on the night of the wood knocking, what I think happened was they were over there hunting at 7 o'clock. They discovered the geese on the other beaver pond, 500 yards to the west. they did a vocalization. I heard that vocalization, and then they started doing wood knocks, and then the waterfowl started acting up. The trumpeters started to make noise because they were being hunted. They saw them. Who knows what was happening, but something was happening down there. They were doing wood knocks to indicate to the family or the clan that there was waterfowl down here. Um, that night, I think that there was another that juvenile was in camp again, or another Sasquatch was in our camp, and they were all around in that area. And when the wood knocking started, what we heard was a juvenile leave camp, go to the northwest. The light wood knocks was that individual. So it ran out of
Mm,
camp and started doing its own wood knocks because the other members of its family were doing wood knocks as well. So it didn't know really how to react or something. I don't know. But the fact that there were
mhm.
light wood knocks and the fact that what we heard was something medium sized, kind of dragging, makes me think that maybe it ran away on all fours or something. That's my theory right now.
Yeah, that is a good theory. That's see, you are a much deeper thinker than I am.
Yeah,
I don't, and that's why it's you're, you know, it's good to have that versus my like nonchalant type attitude when I think about things.
sure.
So it evens it out, I think. And that's yeah, that's totally possibly it happened for sure. I
Mm,
didn't yeah, I wasn't awake to hear the rummaging. I do remember you telling me about that. And the night of the wood knocks, I remember hearing the something move away from the tent.
right.
I didn't feel like it was running.
It
I
was a
want to say it
really
was more like
strange it was a strange weird sound, wasn't it? It was like something was
a yeah,
dragging. Like I would definitely say it was a beaver. If there was no wood knocks out there, I would definitely say there was a beaver in our camp. But
you know,
the fact that it was in our camp, most likely in our camp when the wood knocking started, or it was a beaver and it was up near the water's edge, and when the wood knock started it scared it out and it ran up, got onto
yeah,
shore, and then passed through our camp trying to get out of Dodge. But like Brian mentioned, if it was in the water, or even if it was just outside of the water, and something like wood knocks to scare it happened, you think a beaver's instant reaction would be to run back into the water and to go underwater and then into its beaver house, not to actually go on shore. I think they're way more comfortable in the water to get away from a predator.
yeah, right. I would agree with that assessment, and I think, or it's also could have been just thinking it was safe in our campsite.
Absolutely.
And maybe, it could
Yep.
have been that too. But and then once we started moving around, it instinctively just wanted to leave. But yeah, so many questions, and so you're pretty confident then that you heard the start of the wood knocks,
Yeah,
that
I
they
think
weren't,
so.
you weren't possibly they awoke you, and there could have been potentially more for
There
you
could
for
have
waiting.
potentially been there potentially could have been. I would think that I was awoken by the first wood knock. To be honest, I mean potentially there could have been some prior to me when I first detected it, but I think I heard the beginning of it. Yeah,
Because that would be fascinating to know if there was the wood knocking was started way off in the distance and they were gradually working their way, or if they just came up to that spot and then just started doing it.
right, exactly.
That'd be because then we could almost definitively say they were hunting.
Well, the fact that we heard the wood knocks the night before, or that night, you could say at 7 p.m. At the other end, I feel pretty confident that those were wood knocks and that there was some type of vocalization that was done. Um, and I believe that those trumpeters got up off the water and came over to our side which
Hmm.
we both concluded also is that they were just doing wood knocking and things to push them back and forth. Makes me think that they had worked out some type of plan to surround an area. I don't know how they would do it, how the wood knocks would be involved to hunt geese. I can't comprehend how that would, but maybe that's what they did. But I also have a
Yeah.
theory on the orbs too. So
Okay.
people say they see orbs before and after Bigfoot sightings, and that's exactly what we saw. I saw the orange orb on the shoreline at about 10 p.m. The wood knocks happened at about 3 a.m. And then you saw another orb just an hour, half an hour after the last wood knock, or 15 minutes after the last wood knock. Um, I think that they use orbs as similar to what's called like remote viewing. So they can actually remote view using this orb ability to go to a location and to kind of like do a recon. So when I saw the orange orb, it could have been them looking for geese. And then if geese
Yeah.
were seen or detected, they could then coordinate how they were going to hunt. And then when they left, when you saw the orb, it was basically we had come out of the tent, all the wood knocking stopped. They sent a recon over the body of water, basically to surveil us to see what we were doing. And that was it. Then they were done.
That's a really good theory.
Yeah.
I like it. No, so the getting back to the hunting geese, the question that some of the people ask me is, well, why don't the geese just fly away? And I'm like, that is a great question
Yeah.
because they don't.
They did not.
They could just fly away. Even if they weren't being hunted, they were just harassed by whatever was going on.
Right.
They were going crazy, but they did not leave.
And that's what it sounded like is like they were being harassed. Like I would imagine that I would hear that sound in a documentary with like a bunch of coyotes like cruising the shoreline of a small pond, like
Yes.
ducking in and out of the grass or like just poking their noses through the grass trying to like get near the flock or something. But maybe it was
Now,
like, go ahead.
I know we haven't talked about this, but and I don't know if you want to include this in on the interview, but we could go back because we did on another camping trip back there. We did have geese acting like that, and I'm pretty sure we recorded those. That was back in the days we were running audio 24/7.
Right.
So we know what it sounds like,
Yep.
and we probably have it on recorded on audio.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that really well. I think that was
Yeah.
maybe Trek for Truth. Maybe I no, I remember those. Those it sounded like ducks and geese going nuts in
Yep.
in the bog.
I think it was I think it was the same year as Trek for Truth, but I think it was when we went back in the fall
Yeah,
after we hiked in.
yeah, that makes sense.
But I've been meaning to find some time and go back and find that trip and bring up the audio and just because I would be fascinated because I don't think we ever really thought anything to like monitor, to like go through that audio with a fine tooth comb because all the geese were going crazy. We're like, oh, it's just geese. Like we're not gonna hear any extra sounds. They were so loud.
Right.
But I'd be so interested to know if there was like wood knocks like leading up to the geese going berserk that trip.
Yeah, exactly. I have to
So
think that
that's
there's something weird going on that we don't understand or that we don't know about when that type of event happens with the geese going crazy. It was almost like the geese were too afraid to fly, which would make me
yeah,
think that there were, this is going to sound weird, but that there was like orbs buzzing above them, you know?
okay.
Like,
Well,
yeah.
I've seen an orb, so I'm not going to rule it out.
Now imagine three of them 20 feet above a flock of 10 or 20 geese just circling,
Yeah.
you know.
Or they're getting bombarded with like ultrasound or something, and they're just disorientated.
Oh, that's
I don't
another good
know
point.
what
Yeah,
I don't know what to tell you, but yeah, uh, just fly away. But they won't. They
right.
didn't. So
Yeah, you mentioned wing slapping. It was like they were slapping their wings, like in like an aggressive or a
hmm
nervous posture.
yeah, it sounded like something was trying to get them,
Yep.
and they were not happy about it. Like they were terrified.
Yeah, like they were terrified. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So what is your overall thoughts on the topic now? How do you feel towards them?
Um,
Do you think they're a threatening entity? Do you think they're demonic? Um, kind of, do you have a stance?
I feel a lot better towards them than I did before. I think when I didn't know if they were real and I was just going off of reports and um, eyewitness encounters and those types of things, I was kind of seeing the worst of it and thinking the worst of it. Like, these poor people are being harassed and attacked, and these poor people have to deal with these things if without any information, like what you explained. If what happened to us happened to some people who didn't know anything about the topic, I mean, just imagine like how scary that would be. The fact that we knew what it was made it less scary. So I feel like now that it's happened and I can say that I've experienced that, I can say it really wasn't that bad. Of course, it was scary, but now that I'm past it, I'm like, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to be terrified and that I was going to want to leave like immediately, or that or I thought maybe there was going to be a dark entity with it, or a feeling of dread that was more spiritual in nature that was going to be associated with it if it was some type of spiritual phenomenon. Because I was starting to consider the fact that, you know, Bigfoot, uh, Bigfoot very well probably is a real thing, but it's not a flesh and blood animal that we haven't discovered yet. It's got to be something spiritual, and I still think there's a spiritual aspect to it, but I don't think that it's um, in in leagues with like demonic or satanic, because I didn't feel any of those feelings when any of that stuff happened. And as a believer, I think that we're all given the ability to sense those things. And I I didn't have any of those feelings. I felt rather at ease about it. In fact, I even felt initially I felt like they might close in on us and start to harass us. But after the whole thing was over, I was like, I didn't feel any threatening posture at all, other than that it was just very aggressive and very powerful. So it was that part was frightening. Um, but the research that I've continued to do is that I think Sasquatch is something that God created that's different than everything else that exists. We're, we're He created humans, He created animals, and I think this is something else that He created that was created for a purpose to make sure that people don't think they know about everything in the world. So if there's something out there like Bigfoot, it proves that God exists because we think we know everything in our arrogance. And Bigfoot's that thing that we're never going to be able to grasp, to capture, to know anything about. It's going to leave us wondering. And when you wonder, you start thinking about creation and you start thinking about God. So I think that's Bigfoot's purpose, personally. Um, yeah, I think Bigfoot, whatever they are, they don't have any means of communicating with us, yet they seem like they want to. You hear about people having um, habitual type relationships with them on their property and things like that. And they communicate by stomping. They communicate by doing wood knocks, by doing loud vocalizations, and they communicate by doing other weird things that we see as aggressive and strange because it doesn't fit into our culture or the things that we do. But this is the way that they communicate. So we need to think about it that way. When a Bigfoot replies to your wood knocks, it's maybe just saying hello. Or when they do other things, it's the way that they communicate. So we just need to change the way that we think about them. I don't think that they're benevolent right now. I think that I don't know what they are, but I don't think they're out to get us, and I don't think that they're out to harm us. I don't feel that they could be threatening and they could be aggressive. I'm never going to say that they couldn't be, but I don't think that they're out to mean us harm. I think they would actually be open to having a relationship with us if we approached it correctly. But being the way that we live our lives and our culture, we're so disconnected from the woods and all those natural ways of living your life, I guess off the grid, you could call it. We're too tied into a system and a grid now that we might not even have the ability to connect with them anymore. But I think that they want to connect with us. So until we can find a way to connect with them, we're just never going to learn anything. So my thought is if this type of thing ever happened again to us, would just be to let them know that um, we uh, don't mean any harm and maybe try to give them a gift. So my daydream is that we wake up in the middle of the night and I hear something in camp again. Maybe the thing to do would be to announce yourself and to go out with some fruit and to set the fruit out and then just go back into the tent and say, hey, this is yours. We don't mean any harm. Here's a gift. And then just go back in the tent and then see if it's gone in the morning, and that could be like a goodwill
Yeah,
gesture. Like,
something like that to like acknowledge, like, okay, we know you're here. You know we're here. It's all good,
yeah,
you
exactly.
know. And I think uh, our our experience did leave us with that feeling of not being threatened because once we went outside, it backed off. So
Yep.
yeah, they definitely didn't mean to do us any harm. And I don't know if I told you this that morning, but after the orb, like I felt like a calming sense come over me. Like it's over. Like
Yeah.
okay, I can breathe again. Like I don't have to be on high alert. I just kind of felt that.
Yeah.
And but I'll add this to the story too. Like before that, I was very concerned. I was texting people like, if you don't hear from us by like 5 a.m., and like you try to get a hold of us as soon as you can. But if you don't hear from us like after 5 a.m., like this is where we're at.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I texted. I remember I was texting Brian. I was texting my wife. I mean, I was concerned. I did
Yeah.
not know what was going to happen at that point. Like I did not have, I never thought that was going to happen. Never experienced anything like that. But yeah, I just wanted someone to like know what was going on in case something did happen. Not that, a day goes by. Oh, Tim and Toby aren't home. I wonder what's going on.
Well, that's smart. I mean, that's really smart. No one would ever have a clue as to what happened if something bad like that happened. At least they would
Yeah, right.
have
So
an
there
idea.
was there was a point there where it could have went the bad way too. Like if they would have got more aggressive and
Yeah.
kept coming in and I mean that would have been oof. I don't even know. I'm so glad it didn't come that way. And the whatever animals are back there, and I'm talking about whatever Sasquatches live in that area, and if they've been there since 2008, when the first sightings were of them, yeah, they're peaceful. They We've been back there so much and
Right.
have never had any type of threatening activity directed towards us.
Right. Well, the
So, the couple instances were probably just alerts that we were in the area and
yeah,
kept their distance.
exactly. When we come in there with four-wheelers, we come in there with chainsaws, we come in there with shotguns, and we start taking the food and we start a fire. We do a lot of things that could be seen as being a little bit like, hey, we don't like that around here, but yet they
Yeah,
have tolerated us and never really let us know that they don't like what we've been doing. So that's really interesting that way. And the the one interaction that I think that we really had with them was the last wood knock. I mean, I feel like if there was a wood knock for us, it was that one. It
yeah,
was like
I would,
we
yeah, I'd agree.
we come out of the tent, we got our headlamps on. I come out, you've already been out, and I start shooting the film, and then all of a sudden it's this one single loud wood knock, whereas before it was crack, 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 or crack,
Hmm.
crack, or crack, 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 crack. Here's just this one, and we get it on audio too. So it was like what luck,
Yeah,
that it gave us that wood knock where at least we have that,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
which one of my
yeah, true.
questions for you was going to be, do you think that all these wood knocks would have happened had we had two audio recorders out like we used to?
Oof. Based off of historical data from all our past trips, I'd say no.
No. Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah,
there might be something there, you know what I mean? Where we had no, and
yeah,
I'd taken down the game cams the day before. So it was like if they
yep,
knew about game
no,
cams and they knew about audio recorders, it was like they could come into camp now. They could do wood knocks. They could do what they normally do. They really want to be undetected. They could do what they want to do without being recorded or having evidence being shared with other people, which I think that's their goal, is that they know what we're up to. They know we want evidence, and they know that if we get evidence that we'd probably do something bad with it, it would only lead to more pressure on them. So their goal is to not give us evidence, you know.
that could be, yeah. And I think, well, whoever's listening to this, I would encourage people to maybe do some research on your pineal gland.
Mm-hmm.
That I mean, they're learning new things about that gland. They call it your third eye, but it's basically like it's like an antenna in your brain, and if functioning properly, it can pick up all these different waves of energy that we don't utilize anymore because our pineal glands are like they don't ever get used, so they're just dead.
Right.
And these things might have full function of that. And
Absolutely.
if you have a full functioning that type of sensory in your brain, you could probably hear the um, mechanisms working in a trail camera or an audio recorder because they emit, you know, radio waves
Yeah.
when they're powered on. And infrared is a yeah, just a little bit I've learned about the pineal gland so far. It's got cones, just like your eyeball. That's why they call it your third eye. It's
So
like an eye
weird.
that can pick up all these different
Yeah.
ultraviolet rays and light that we don't see, that we don't perceive with our 2D eyes.
Right.
So it's maybe just a case of that where they haven't lost that ability yet, and we have a long time ago.
Yeah.
And some people, you hear this mind speak that people claim. It could just be that that particular human has that capability yet to
Yeah.
receive that type of stuff.
Right.
So yeah, it's very, it like I said earlier, it opens up a whole another line of questions that it's good to have one question answered, but then it just spurs more. And yeah,
Yeah.
it is fascinating, and I I don't want to get too overwhelmed by it, but you could really dig deep and
Become
go on
obsessed.
and become obsessed and really and possibly never ever have those questions answered.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of take what we know and if something happens again in the future, that it'll be very interesting.
I think that's really,
Or you might,
really smart. That's a good way to go about it. Yeah, it's really smart.
yeah. So I think you've covered a lot. I don't know if I have any
Yeah. Anything else that I
questions.
didn't mention that you wanted to say or?
Well, the one thing I found weird is when we started going over the audio that we did capture that night, and we heard that what sounds like a red fox.
Yeah.
That I never heard that with my ears, and the audio recorder picked it up very well.
Yeah. It did.
Did
Yeah.
you hear that with your naked ear?
No, I never did. I think I determined that it happened when I was. Yes, I'm for sure determined that it happened while I was in the tent and while you were outside of the tent. Um, I wouldn't have heard it because I was in the tent changing the batteries on my headlamp and and loading two magazines for my pistol. So I was
Yeah,
just making a bunch of noises. Um, but the audio recorder was outside the tent at that point, and it was facing towards the wood knockers, only with a front side of it, so not a rear side. So uh, it sounds like it's coming from that direction out there.
yeah.
Um, I can't determine what it was, but it is a very, did that sound anything like that hissing that you heard?
No,
Okay,
no,
okay,
the hissing, and yeah, I knew the audio recorder would never pick up that hissing because of the tone of it,
okay.
but I definitely heard hissing, and
Yeah,
I could have been fumbling around with something too when that other sound came through. That you know, yeah, I'm not gonna say it's a red fox for sure, but it sounds similar.
yeah,
It's definitely it's some animal made that sound.
I can upload the that audio to this portion of the conversation so people can hear it. But what Toby's referring to is um, what was captured on the audio recorder just 20, 30 minutes into the recording before we had ever gone outside the tent. Toby had gone outside and I stayed in there. And I think there are three separate of these vocalizations. To my knowledge, they sounded like something like this, or like a "Arr, arr." Yeah, it was more like
Yeah,
that. It sounded like a velociraptor when I heard it, like where they made that barking, like "Arr, arr."
yeah,
Yeah,
yep,
it sounded like that. So it was almost when I first heard it, I was like, "Holy cow! We just picked up a really bizarre like Bigfoot vocalization." And then I started thinking, what could that be? And then when I was in the tent, I was yawning like crazy because I was cold and I was shivering, and I thought, oh, it had to have been me yawning, like like at the end of a yawn where you're like,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, and then but then I started listening to the way that I yawn, and I'm like, I don't know, because you kind of take a big gasping breath when you have a big yawn. It's like something like that. And I
yeah.
was like, I don't know. I really, the jury's out on that one. I just really don't know.
My initial thought when I heard that was not a yawn. I wouldn't
Okay.
even cross my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really sounds like some type of like maybe a. It sounds like a red fox to me. Like very similar, but
And
I could easily see that
they
being.
could have kicked up a red fox, I mean,
Yeah, it's possible, but I'm just again, so that morning, hearing what I heard with my ears and then what the audio recorder picked up, I know that sound had to be pretty loud for for your recorder to pick it up the way it did.
Yeah,
I was just kind of stunned that I didn't hear that
right. Exactly. Because you were outside of
because
the tent.
yeah, and if you put the wood knocks, you know, in this conversation, I don't think people can really grasp how loud they were because they seem really soft and muffled
Right.
on the audio recorder. And yes, the one wood knocker was doing soft, muffled ones. And the last one that we really got a really good capture on was definitely farther away. But man, when it first kicked off, it was super loud.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, it like I said, I think it probably you could have heard it probably 4 miles away. They were just
Wow. They sound like
so it's gonna be
gunshots. They sound like
yeah,
gunshots when they're that close, don't they?
yeah, and just echoing. And I think people won't really get the full grasp from hearing it on the audio, which is it's it'd have been so cool to like be able to replicate that full effect,
Right.
but they just that's just how it goes.
Yeah. And
Because
they,
I think the for a while there, I think we had the audio recorder just in the tent, so the tent walls muting some of it.
yeah.
But yeah, how many did you end up getting on audio? Like 6 or 7 of them?
Yeah, one powerful one, and the powerful one wasn't even as powerful as the most powerful. I would say it was half, if not less,
Yeah,
of
it
what the
was
most
half.
powerful ones was. We got that good one, and then I would say we have 5 or 6 soft knocks from the third subject.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we did capture a whistle in there as well that to me is a clear whistle. I mean, whether Sasquatch did it, I don't know, but there's a whistle from something in there that was captured, and I never heard that one with the naked ear either, but there's definitely a whistle in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's fascinating to me is now that we've had that experience, I've been like going back in my head with all the questionable things that happened in the past years. I'm
Yeah.
like, I wonder if that was it. Remember we found footprints one year, and we're like, ah, it's just got to be people walking around out here in the middle of nowhere in the mud.
Right.
Now I'm like, oh, I wonder if those were
I
maybe
wonder.
juvenile Sasquatches, and then just yeah, just kind of second guessing everything. I'm like, well,
Well,
okay, now I know they're there. Have they been there this whole time?
think of
Is that
think
why
of
we found these?
all the things that you like you said before, all the things that we just determined were gunshots that could have been wood knocks.
Yeah,
You know, every evening, right, it was getting sundown, we'd hear wood knocks from the west or gunshots from the west. And we'd always say,
yeah,
ah, must be. Yeah, it must be. You know, yep.
yeah. It was always so easy to just kind of set it off to the side and like, it could be anything. Like the time Brian did a wood knock, and then we got uh, replies right away. And
Yeah,
when we were remaking that Trek for the Truth would knock,
yeah,
like that's now I look back at that, that's super significant. But yet we were just kind of like, well, okay, yeah, I mean, could be, but how do we know?
right. Because they weren't right up on us like they were this time,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. It changes the proximity, really changes things when they're
Yes,
right up in your space.
yes. Yeah.
Ugh.
How close do you
Yeah.
think that closest wood knocker was to the shoreline? Had to have been.
Um, the one that was the closest to our camp
Yeah. No, across the loudest one.
across.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think just kind of visualizing from the top of the ridge down to the water there. What would you say? That's like 25 yards, 30 yards,
Away from the
40? I don't
water.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just always wonder whether it was really close to the water's edge or whether it was up on the ridge, another 20 yards away. it's hard to know. But
Yeah, I feel like from the way the knocks were reverberating, I feel like it was up on top of the ridge because it sounded like they were just blasting across the whole area.
well,
And
then
I think if it was down at the water level, it would have been like really just pounding in it right at us
yeah,
and maybe not as much echo.
yeah.
But
Which brings up an interesting question then. If it was hunting geese, is doing wood knocks 30 yards away from the shoreline, is it still hunting geese up there? Because now it's not even able to grab the geese, you know?
right, and that's
So,
why I never felt like that one was doing the hunting.
yeah,
It felt like that one was kind of like running the show, or maybe getting the geese worked up, and then the other ones were in closer to
right.
like snatch them or whatever they were gonna do to them. I don't know.
Yeah. So it has
Yeah,
to
because it
make you
was pretty far from the water and in the woods, so the geese aren't gonna fly through the trees if they were gonna
exactly.
fly.
In the second loudest woodknocker to the right was probably back in the woods a little bit as well and wasn't on any sort of body of water. So that's two subjects. And then there's a third one that's on our side. Most likely it's in the bog. Um, so it makes you think, was there a fourth or a fifth one near the
Yeah,
geese?
my inclination was there was another one. It just it either wasn't knocking as much to actually like kind of pinpoint where its location was, but I remember when it was going through all that, I remember thinking there was another one off back farther to the right of the second one.
That's right. You did think that there was another closer one that was like halfway, right?
Yeah, it wasn't. I kind of felt like it was farther away than the second one, more to the right yet,
Okay.
but not closer to us, but like farther back. And you
Yeah.
know, it's hard to say that the second one wasn't hunting because unless we could actually like maybe fly a drone over that area, we don't know if there's any little pockets of water that pooled up in there.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know for sure if that one was back in the woods that far, if it was on down close to down in the bottomland there. So I don't. It's hard to know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
all different distinct knocks. Like
They really
no doubt
were.
three for sure,
Yeah.
and in different locations.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And it makes me think about what I saw. I saw something black down there that morning, and I got it on that video recording where I say I think I saw something. It lines up really perfectly for a
mhm,
Sasquatch that would have been hunting that exact spot. So
yeah, and
that's
then so from um, the first wood knocker and the tamaracks where you potentially saw one pass through, whereabouts was that orb located? Like in the middle of those two, or more towards the first wood
more
knocker?
towards the first one. I would say that where I saw the orb and where I think the first woodknocker would have been within 10, 20 yards of one another,
Okay,
if
so
not
in
in the
the
exact same spot. I mean, I still question whether they're using sticks to make these noises. So these knocking noises could have been coming from the exact same spot where I saw the orb, and the orb was more like in the bushes, right close up to the water.
okay, yeah, all all within that little area there,
Yeah. Yep.
the potential sighting, and then where the wood knockers were
Right.
established.
Yeah, where I saw the potential sighting the following morning was down and to the right, so it would have been in between the first knocker and the second knocker, but more in the bog in a small collection of tamaracks. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the orb I saw right
Hmm.
in between us and the first wood knocker. So
Yep.
yeah, all right there.
Yep. All right there. Up close and personal, just
Yeah,
without a doubt. I mean, it's amazing what we got to experience. I mean, it was right there rather than 500 yards away. Because even if it was 500 yards away, we would have been woken in the middle of the night by that. But the fact was, is it was right there. It was we
Hmm.
were a witness to it. We were audience to this event. It
Oh
was
yeah.
just
If it would have been farther away, never would have got out of the tent. Just would have laid there and listened to them, and you know, probably shoved your audio recorder outside. But yeah, never would have got up and started a campfire or any of that kind of stuff.
right. And I often think, had you been a paranoid person with a AR-15 in your tent and those wood knockings started happening, the first thing you could have done was open your tent door and unloaded a magazine on that tree line if you were afraid enough.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If you were panicked, yeah.
And so if those were people hoaxing, like you just would never do that. And not in today's
Yeah.
age where people have firepower like that. I mean, you could have you could have seriously like had a good chance of hitting something if you were a paranoid person thinking that it was a real Sasquatch or it was hoaxers and you just wanted to let them have it.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, yeah, you could maybe potentially get one crazy person to try and do that, but to get three
yes,
crazy people all together
right. And,
without one sane one in the group, like, yeah, this is a horrible idea. Plus, we're gonna be miserable.
yeah, right.
I mean, we're gonna freeze. We're gonna get wet. We got a long way to walk, and we don't know if these guys are gonna shoot us.
It'd be different if we were right on the border of somebody's property and they like wanted to find a reason to scare us away or something
Oh,
like that.
right.
But even if we were right on the border of somebody's property, they wanted to scare us, they would probably do it in a different way. I mean, you don't hear people trying to scare people away by imitating Bigfoot when you don't want
No,
them to come back. You hear about them shooting at people or having a verbal confrontation or, you know, popping your tires on your ATV or something like that.
right.
They're not gonna try to scare you with wood knocks. So
No. If they're local people and they don't want you back there, they're gonna find out where you're coming in from. They're gonna probably start talking. They're gonna find out where you're parking your vehicles, and they're
yeah,
gonna say, We don't want these guys back there," or whatever. But it's public land. We're not doing any trespassing,
right.
and yeah, there's no people. I don't even know what. Have you ever took a map and like did straight line to like the nearest residence?
Yeah, I
It's
did.
got to be a few miles, or
It's
I don't know.
yeah. I estimated it's probably about like 3 miles, and it's over completely wooded ground with bogs in between as well. It's not
Yeah,
it's not easy terrain, and if there's maybe some logging roads back there, but there's not even an easy way to get to the point to where we were coming from that direction. You'd literally be hiking through it, like you said. You know, yeah,
yeah. I think if you took someone who likes going on adventures and they like doing camping trips and they like seeing, you know, like beautiful landscapes, and we took them out with us, they'd be like, "What are you guys doing?
yeah,
This is this is like not hospitable.
right.
Hospitable. You know, it's
It,
just kind of.
it's just a swamp. Yeah, it's not even that beautiful, right?
I mean, it's got its moments of beauty if you get a nice sunrise or
Yeah,
sunset, and but the serenity is really what is beautiful back there.
yeah.
Yeah, there's no like nice waterfalls. There's no even like clean water around.
No, it's not even a creek,
Like
right?
there's no fresh water. We tried that one year.
Yeah,
Remember when we were like, oh, we'll just find water back there. And we hiked in, we didn't want to carry all that extra water with us.
right,
Yeah, we were drinking water out of the puddles on the trail.
right.
So, I mean,
Very
yeah,
inhospitable.
it's
Yeah.
not like a destination to go camping.
No, it's rather yeah, it's rather
Yeah.
gross back there, and we're Yeah, to be back there in the summer would be almost impossible.
Yeah. Well, you've tried it. I've tried it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's no fun.
yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
well, cool. Yeah, I think we touched on a lot of good points here. I appreciate it.
Yeah. If you want to touch on some more, or if you want to add some more stuff, or you want to talk about something else, let me know.
Sounds good, my man. I appreciate it. Well, I'm going to go ahead and turn off this recording here. Just one second.